Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Lucy Loomis, Director of Sturgis Library, and Melanie Lauwers, who is on the library's Board of Trustees, working on the Vonnegut Celebration. The library is putting on this special celebration Columbus Day weekend in Barnstable Village. Welcome to the show to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
For those who are not familiar with Kurt Vonnegut's work, let's give an overview. He wrote some of the most original novels of the 20th century and so influential. Melanie, can you talk a little bit about him?
I can. Kurt Vonnegut is, I would say, a post-war spirit. He was sent to World War II late in the game and captured by the Germans about 8 days or 11 days, something like that, after he landed, and was imprisoned in a prison camp and then taken to Dresden, Germany, where he witnessed the Dresden firebombing and was in fact tasked with doing some of the burials after the fact. It changed him forever. And when he came back to the United States, he went through a variety of experiences and jobs and things like that. But I think really at heart the man was cut out to be a writer. And starting in the late 50s, all of the 60s, 70s, he started writing books that reflected social change and upheaval, but and also very deeply American culture in a post-war world. And some of the most famous ones, of course, are Slaughterhouse-Five, which is probably the most famous one, and directly came out of his experience at Dresden. And Breakfast of Champions, God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. There's quite a few novels, a lot of short stories. He was, in fact, one of the premier short story writers. His work appeared regularly in the New Yorker magazine. And then also he wrote a lot of essays about literature and about writing. So he spans a very, very broad swath of American literary letters through the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s, and is due for a revival. I think we're catching him on that swing up again.
And many people may not realize that Kurt Vonnegut spent a lot of time on Cape Cod, lived here for many years. Tell us about his life here.
Well, he lived in Barnstable. In fact, he owned, and this will make people laugh, he owned the first Saab dealership on Cape Cod, and I believe only the second one in the country, something like that. It was on Route 6A in Barnstable, in West Barnstable, actually, and you can still see the building. And he wrote from here, and he felt very deeply about Cape Cod. He was very attached to it, very attached to what I would call village life. He got to know people deeply. He had great interest in community theater, firefighters,
That's right.
a wide variety of things. And so as he experienced them in the community, amazingly, they went right into his books.
If you know Scudder's Lane at all, it's off of Route 6A in Barnstable Village. There's a big white house at the head of Scudder's Lane, and that is the Vonnegut house. His daughter Edie still lives there. And if you go under the underpass, the railroad bridge, you'll see some artwork that was actually done by her. He wrote a piece for the first essay in Welcome to the Monkey House was actually written about Barnstable Village. In that book, it's called Where I Live, and he also published it as something called You've Never Been to Barnstable. And so that's a great essay about life in Barnstable Village and its quirky ways.
He also wrote a short story called Who Am I This Time, which is based on the sort of the activities of the Barnstable Comedy Club, where he was very involved with that too, and how people in the community, and this I think applies to all Cape community theater, is that people go about their daily lives and then all of a sudden they're called to the stage and they become somebody else. And then when the play is over, they go back to their daily lives. And he picked up on that very carefully and wrote this lovely little short story about a man who worked in the hardware store but could become anyone on stage. Very cute, very sweet.
They made it into a movie with Susan Sarandon and what's his name? Christopher Walken.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And now, going back to whose idea it was to have a Vonnegut celebration. Of course, it was many years ago when he was here, but people don't forget his connections to the Barnstable Comedy Club and among other local connections. But you folks got together and decided to do a celebration. Tell us about that.
I think it started out as a conversation on Sandy Neck with Edie Vonnegut and Patrick Ramage and a few other people, and one of our trustees, Colin Campbell, got in on that conversation at some other point and brought it to us and said he thought it was a great idea. So we put a committee together and just to kind of do a little feasibility study, and decided that we thought it was going to be an opportunity to get the whole village involved, for every organization and business and church and group in the village to participate in some way or another. So,
and he had been a board member.
He had been a board
too.
member at Sturgis Library.
So it's a nice way to honor him. Board members who've come decades after him.
That's right. He was actually a board member in the 60s, and he sort of protested in a speech against Sturgis Library, called it, I think, a clapboard tomb, because it was an old-fashioned library that didn't buy many new books, and in that short story, Where I Live, he talks about the fact that we had a very outdated Encyclopedia Britannica. But he went back to sort of recant his statement, and he was passionate about libraries, and he realized that that they sort of took his words to heart and became, in the 1970s, a really modern, vibrant library. So he had something to do with that.
Now, you have a real variety of things taking place during the celebration, which is Columbus Day weekend, readings, concerts, and such. Tell me about some of the things you have going on. What are the highlights?
Well, we've got lectures. We have a great lecture by Don Farber, who was his friend and his agent. We're hoping to get people involved from the community that might remember Kurt Vonnegut or have a story. I hope that they'll attend on Friday night. We have a chowder fest. We have a walking tour of the village. We have a hot dog lunch at the fire station, a showing of Slaughterhouse-5, where film critic from the Cape Cod Times, Tim Miller, and librarian Ann Spire will be leading a conversation afterwards. We have an Art of the Doodle program at the Cape Cod Art Association, a concert funded by the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod on the Village Green and the new stage in Barnstable Village, a lecture by Mark Leeds, who wrote the Vonnegut Encyclopedia, the head of the Kurt Vonnegut Memorial Library from Indianapolis will be here, Julia Whitehead. We have a staged reading of Happy Birthday, Wanda June at the Barnstable Comedy Club, and lots of other things. We have a Cape Cod book sale. We have raffle items. We have Vonnegut kinds of exhibits. And Melanie kind of put together a Vonnegut-inspired writing challenge that we're going to start doing shortly.
Yeah, he had issued eight rules for writing, and so we asked people, it's not a contest per se, but rather can you follow his 8 rules for writing? And he was very clear about it, and they make a great deal of sense, and I will only mention the first 2. The first one is use the time of a total stranger in such a way that he or she will not feel the time was wasted, which I think is good for all writers to remember. And the second one is give the reader at least one character he or she can root for, and he certainly, strongly follows these rules in his own writing. And the challenge is going on now. We're asking for little stories of 1,000 words or less, and we'll post the ones that we think come close to keeping to the rules.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We are talking about the upcoming Vonnegut Celebration coming up Columbus Day weekend. I'm talking with Lucy Loomis, director of the Sturgis Library, and Melanie Lauwers, who is on the Board of Trustees of the library. They are 2 of the organizers of this very special and unique celebration coming up. Now, there are a number of different organizations who are participating in this. Talk about who's involved in this.
That Tales of Cape Cod, which is right next door, they host lectures on Cape Cod. The Barnstable Historical Society is hosting the walking tour. We have the Cape Cod Art Association, the Barnstable Comedy Club. We have, I'm looking at my notes.
Cape Cod beer.
Cape Cod beer is creating.
This is very important.
Unique and limited edition beer that in his honor with a special label, and there'll be a release date in September for that beer, and that'll be served all throughout and sold by Cape Cod Beer, which is fantastic. I'm forgetting some people, I know I am, but businesses, the Unitarian Church is hosting one of our events. But I did want to talk a little bit about the fact that Kurt Vonnegut was not only a writer, but he was an artist. He did a lot of art that looks like doodling, but he illustrated a lot of his own books, and his daughter Nanette just helped compile and wrote the introduction to Kurt Vonnegut Drawings book, which is pretty amazing. And one of the exhibits that we're going to have is being loaned by his daughter Edie. It's in all the books, a lot of the books that he owned, he couldn't just read a book, he had to doodle on the end papers. And so she has a bunch of books that you might cart off to the book sale if you didn't know any better, but if you open them up, you'll see that they're covered with his artwork. So she's going to loan those to us to display. And we also have a local artist, John Arrett, doing a series of paintings in Kurt Vonnegut's honor, inspired by his book. So we're going to be exhibiting those as well.
A lot going on. Now, how did you decide to do this Columbus Day weekend? Is there a significance having to do with him?
There's not. Actually, it was logistics more than anything else. We really thought that doing it in the middle of the summer would drive everybody insane. It was an opportunity to have a weekend-long celebration on a weekend when people might be available and people still might be here, and drive some business to the local businesses and to the village, but not overwhelm people too much. So.
Now, one of the events happening is a discussion of banned books. So let's talk about the public's reaction to Vonnegut and how he fits in with that theme.
Well, he got banned a lot, and there were a variety of reasons. First of all, he was patriotic, but not vocally so. He loved the United States, but he was certainly one, as many people were in the 60s and 70s, to point out flaws. And he also was not a huge fan of organized religion, and he made no bones about that. He thought that there were other human values that carried the day better than organized religion, and he was very clear about it, and portrayed it that way. And so it was easy to ban him. And I wouldn't say, having read a number of the novels in preparation for this event too, I wouldn't say that we're talking about things like bad language, and we're certainly not talking about the kind of hypersexualized things that we find in novels now that are banned. These were really sort of the patriotism and religion levels that he was banned on back in those days, which were still considered, bannable offenses, and maybe a little less so now. But at that time, those were considered, especially post-World War II. No one ever thought there was anything about that war. And using Dresden, which was what he came to believe was an act by the Allies, which did not need to take place. Well, he put that up in front of people, and then they took notice. So
we are going to have, I think, Slaughterhouse-Five, because it's set in military world, does have some naughty language in it. So we're going to be selling bookmarks with all the bad words from Slaughterhouse-Five in it, which will be kind of fun. But on the back, it has a quote, because one of the school, and I can't remember where, someplace in the Midwest, the principal actually took the books and removed them from the classroom and put them in the incinerator. And he wrote a very heartfelt letter about that, and how he felt about being banned and burned. So I think that also will come up in our topics of conversation, because there's something, I think he took it very personally, as if he himself and his ideas were really being just done away with completely. So,
well, that bookmark sounds like a must-have item. But I noticed that there will be a Vonnegut exhibit and a raffle of Vonnegut items. You mentioned the doodles, and I wonder what other things will be in the exhibit and in the raffle that are items.
We have 3 raffle items. We have a original print of his that talks about the audience for a play and the audience for a book, and it's a beautiful original sign print by him that'll be raffled off. We'll have a basket of books and a Kurt Vonnegut doll and a bunch of Kurt Vonnegut collectible items that will be up for raffle, and we also have a beer. A Cape Cod beer basket, which will have 4 beer glasses with a quote about drinking and telephoning at the same time, which is probably never a good idea. And some Cape Cod beer and coasters and things like that. We're also having T-shirts made with an image of the print. I don't know if mentioning the Kurt Vonnegut doll, he's making the rounds on Cape Cod right now, having his picture taken with all kinds of people.
I was just about to ask you about the doll because you've brought the doll in here today.
He goes everywhere with her now.
Tell me about the history of this doll.
Well, there's a series of dolls called Little Thinkers, and there's a doll of Kurt Vonnegut, there's a doll of Shakespeare, Albert Einstein. So we bought one, and it's not an original idea because the Kurt Vonnegut Memorial Library did it too, but we thought leading up to this event we'd have him travel all over the Cape and be seen with important people like Laura Reckford and maybe the town manager. You never know where he'll turn up next. He's been with Tim Fryery. He's been down to the Barnstable Yacht Club. He's been in the Barnstable.
He's been out to sea.
Store. He's been out to sea.
He's been out to sea. He went sailing the other day.
Yes,
I noticed.
all kinds of. He's been on a motorcycle and
if you follow Sturgis Library on Facebook, you can see where he goes next because he's popping up almost every day.
Now, we only have about a minute left, and you talked about lots of the different events, but what would you like to leave people with in terms of this special weekend, Columbus Day, the Vonnegut Celebration? You had mentioned the screening of the movie Slaughterhouse-Five. I'm sure that will be a big item. What are some of the biggest items you want to leave people with?
I'd like people to know that they can get the schedule on our website and that it's changing a little bit every day, so keep checking back. But most of the events are available for free or for a free will donation. We have a couple events that you do need tickets for, and those are listed, and there is a price for those. But I would say 80% of the things that are happening are free, and we hope people will come. It might be crowded, so come early.
And I would just like to add that here's an opportunity to immerse yourself in a writer who is not only important to Cape Cod, but very, very important to world literature. And he's on the upswing.
A great overview of this important writer and this upcoming first-of-its-kind event. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you, Laura.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.